Coming to paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets from the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Pre-order your copy of ISIS Legacy on Amazon.com today. New York Mayor Eric Adams attacked the press, claiming that white journalists misrepresent him. Now on Tuesday, New York Mayor Eric Adams went on an emotional rant where he threatened to stop fielding so-called off-topic questions at his press conferences and blamed the New York news media for a lack of racial diversity. Now, this attack on the press is one that was made right after your Eric Adams had a meeting with the head of the state legislature and the head of the state senate in Albany. Both black women, they declined to hear your Eric Adams appeal to repeal bail reform here in New York, one of the causes for all of the crime here in New York City. And your Eric Adams, after being humiliated and emasculated by these black women in the legislature and the state senate, then decided to deflect onto the white media. However, you really can't blame the white media here for most of Eric Adams' failures. No, your Eric Adams has been failing from day one, and he's been failing from day one because he tried to gain favor with the institution of white supremacy after he won the position of mayor here in New York. Now, your Eric Adams' first big mistake after becoming the new mayor of New York was showing that he was not going to be a leader who stood on his own 2 feet. And because he was not a leader who stood on his own 2 feet, this is where people started to lose respect for him in the Albany State House. Now, your Eric Adams talked a good game when he ran for mayor here in New York, and he talked about change. However, we saw that his actions were different than his words once he became the new mayor-elect of New York City. And when he became the new mayor-elect of New York City, he started acquiescing to men like Bill de Blasio, who were considered to be the worst mayor in the history of New York City, and he made efforts to go out here and preserve the legacy of Bill de Blasio by going out here and appearing with him on his New Year's Eve celebration, which was going on at the height of the Omicron wave of COVID-19. And as this wave was going on and millions of people were sick throughout the city, your Eric Adams went out here and celebrated with Bill de Blasio and had his inauguration while he was standing right next to Bill de Blasio. And as he was doing this, he then decided to preserve many of Bill de Blasio's failed policies, like his jab mandate, which makes it where New Yorkers cannot go into bars and restaurants, and even makes it where children can't go into these bars, restaurants, and movie theaters, and also even prevents many New Yorkers, especially foundational black New Yorkers, from even being able to go to work. Now, these policies are extremely destructive to the lives of many New Yorkers, but your Eric Adams wanted to gain favor with white politicians in Albany and white politicians who were aspiring for offices like Bill de Blasio. And he had created covert contracts with Bill de Blasio, hoping that if he preserved his policies, he would have an opportunity to be part of his cabinet if he became the new governor of New York. However, your Bill de Blasio then decided not to run for the office of governor, and this left your Eric Adams up shit creek. Now, these decisions by Eric Adams were ones that showed him coming from a position of weakness, and when he came from that position of weakness, he didn't see how these coming from this position was putting him in a bad place, and that place was one where people did not see him as somebody they needed to respect. Now, in the business of politics, A respect is an intangible that you need to have if you hope to get your agenda passed through. And your Eric Adams didn't understand that coming from the beta position by trying to preserve the legacies of men like Bill de Blasio, who has an approval rating lower than Osama bin Laden, was not a way to get respect. And your Eric Adams didn't understand this because he was spellbound by his white supremacy, and because he was so caught up in getting attention from this white man and licking his boots, he didn't understand that this white man was basically playing him. And because he didn't understand that this white man was playing him, he didn't understand that this white man was not somebody you tried to gain favor with, because he was coming from that position of weakness, not understanding there's a big difference between like and respect. And your Eric Adams' big problem is because he's so enamored with white people, he's looking for white people to like him, but he doesn't understand like is an emotion. Like is an emotion that many of your black bootlicks really get confused on. They look to be liked by white people. Unfortunately, when you look to be liked by white people, they really just use that as a way to take advantage of you, because they see how weak you are and how you'll do anything to gain their validation and approval. And because you'll do anything to gain their validation and approval, they know that they have the leverage in these situations. So you're looking to be liked by the white person, but the white person does not respect you. And because people do not respect your Eric Adams, this is why his whole efforts to go to Albany wound up falling completely apart, because he went there looking to try to push his agenda, but there was no way to push an agenda when you come from a position of weakness. When those black women saw him acquiescing to these weak white men like Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo, who have low approval ratings, these black women who were in positions of power as the heads of the state legislature and the state senate, saw that your Eric Adams was a weak man. And because they saw his weakness, they had no interest in hearing anything he had to say. And when he went out here and got emasculated by those black women, he wanted to make it like, oh, the white media was the bad guy, but the guy who had messed up in this whole situation was your Eric Adams. And once he wound up getting embarrassed out here, he wanted to again blame the white media for everything. But the whole thing was, you can't really blame the white media for doing its job, because the white media is the media arm of white supremacy, and the media arm of white supremacy's job is not to go out here and elevate a black man. No, they have no interest in elevating a black man, and any self-aware black man understands this. But your Eric Adams, as a black bootlick, what he wants to do is deflect, and he wants to deflect because he doesn't want anybody to see how incompetent he really is. Because in this whole situation, the real problem is Eric Adams is a weak and ineffective leader, and because he cannot lead, he's trying to make it where it's all somebody else's fault. Well, it's not somebody else's fault. No, when you're the leader, you're the one who has to make the decision. And sadly, your Eric Adams can only make a decision when a white person is there. And that again shows how weak he truly is, because he doesn't want to be accountable for his own decisions. So what he does is he goes out here and follows the lead of people like your Bill de Blasio. And then when he fails, it's somebody else's fault. Like here in the state legislature, he'll probably try to blame it on the black women, but the problem is he never came from a position of strength. A man has to come from a position of strength when he's in a leadership position, and he has to be able to stand up as related to his own mission on his own platform. And your Eric Adams, again, he talked a good game about fighting crime here in New York City, but he wound up destroying his whole agenda even before it got started because he came out looking submissive and weak, and because he came out looking submissive and weak, this is what made it where he could not further advance his agenda with people within his own party. Because if those people in your own party don't see you as strong, they have no interest in supporting your position. Now, yes, we do need to get rid of bail reform because it is a complete failure here in New York, but the way your Eric Adams approached the position is the thing that wound up doing himself in, because him coming from the position of weakness was the thing that wound up making all of his efforts to campaign in Albany fail. Not to mention the way he talks a good game and comes from his feelings. And when you come from your feelings with emotion, you really don't reinforce your positions very strongly to persuade people to see your side of the argument. That is the other mistake that your Eric Adams makes, is that he oftentimes comes from emotion, like he did at this press conference. And again, coming from your emotions as a man is coming from a position of weakness, because when people see a man being emotional, they see that man as a weak man, and they see that man as somebody they don't respect. Now, some men think that by coming from their emotions, it shows how passionate they are, but when you are in political circles, you are coming across as very weak. And when you come across as weak, people don't respect your position. And when they don't respect your position, you are not going to be able to get your agenda across. So that was the other mistake your Eric Adams constantly makes. He comes from his emotions, and when you come from your emotions, people will see you as weak. And that's what he did with this rant, where he tried to blame the media for his failures, ironically not seeing how he was failing at connecting and conveying his message to people. Because when you go out here and you're doing things like he did on one press conference, crying, or in one press conference talking about banning this drill rap, these are all extremely weak positions. And when you come from weak positions with weak arguments, this is not going to go out here and get people to support your message, because they are not going to respect you, because you're coming from that position of weakness. So people are not seeing your Eric Adams as strong, and this is only 6 weeks into his term as mayor. And this is the period where you really want to leave a strong first impression, because the first 90 days of your term as mayor are key to laying the foundation for your agenda. Unfortunately, your Eric Adams has not really set forth his vision and a direction for where he wants to go as mayor in these first 6 weeks. And that's really showing that he's not going to be very effective in his first term, because again, your first 90 days really set the tone for everything. And if you're saying you're going to be different than de Blasio in your campaign, we're not really seeing it when you're going out here keeping many of his failed policies in place. And we're seeing numerous violent incidents take place, like what happened on the subway, where an Asian woman wound up losing her life, and another Asian woman wound up losing her life when one of these homeless stalkers wound up murdering her in her own apartment. So we're not really seeing much change, and the reason why I believe you're not seeing much change is because your Eric Adams is so enamored with white people that he refuses to undo many of Bill de Blasio's failed policies, because he doesn't want to upset a white man, and he does not want to go out here and destroy the legacy of a white man. And that's really dangerous, because it shows us that your Eric Adams is coming from a position of weakness, because he cannot lead as a heterosexual black man. No, he can only follow the lead of white men, and he's only looking to gain the favor of white men. And that really showed again by him preserving Bill de Blasio's policies and trying to maintain that covert contract with him that if he preserved his policies, he would possibly get that position with Bill de Blasio when he ran for governor. And him having that lunch with Andrew Cuomo, he's jockeying to be the butler of some white person, but he's not looking to lead New York City. And again, these are all coming from positions of weakness. And when you come from positions of weakness, you don't really go out here looking to have your own vision or set your own direction. And that is a major problem with Eric Adams, because if you're going to try to change a city, you have to take the lead, you have to take the initiative, and you have to come from your own position of strength. And that's not a position where Eric Adams is coming from. But instead of him going out here and taking responsibility for his failures, what he wants to do is go out here and deflect from his failures by saying that white journalists are misrepresenting him, when all he is doing is the white supremacist job by representing the incompetence they actually want to see. Now, I see a major escalation coming up for your Eric Adams as related to the media looking to demonize him, and sadly, he is giving them the fuel for that fire. Now, the media is now using this weakness that they see in Eric Adams to go out here and now create a campaign to try to get these jab mandates reversed. Now, Eric Adams has allowed these jab mandates to remain in place that prevent many New Yorkers from going to work, many New Yorkers from being able to go to a restaurant, many New Yorkers from being able to go to a bar, and many children from being able to go to a bar or a restaurant. And what he's done with those policies is preserve your Bill de Blasio's policies, not to stop the spread of COVID, because Omicron has dropped over 80%. No, he's doing this because he wants to keep this white man's policies in place because he's afraid of offending white people. Well, now those same white people who he's trying to preserve the legacy of are now starting to turn on him because they're going out here and realizing they want to get New York's economy rolling again, and they see your Eric Adams as a liability in the request to get New York's whole city economy turned around. Now, you recently had David Stern, the head of the NBA, come out here and say that these jab mandates don't make any sense because they want Kyrie Irving to play, and that is deliberately done because where was your David Stern back in December when Bill de Blasio put these mandates in place, and where was David Stern when these mandates were in place at the start of the NBA season? That's a critical question I want to ask a lot of people out here, and your Eric Adams doesn't have the answer to it. When Bill de Blasio put the mandate in place, it was perfectly fine, but now that the black man is running the office, they all of a sudden have an issue with these jab mandates. And you also have a lot of restaurant and business owners now reporting these stories. And again, this is all done by design because the media arm of white supremacy is flipping the game. And again, your Eric Adams, this is all his own fault because he doesn't understand the subtleties of the political situation transpiring around him. He wants to say that the white journalists are misrepresenting him. No, the white media is doing the job it always does, just like white supremacy is doing the job it always does, taking both sides of the argument. And as it takes both sides of the argument, they are boxing your Eric Adams in, and they are setting him up for one of the biggest N-word moments to ever grace history. Basically, they are setting him up to be the bad guy here as related to these jab mandates, and they're setting him up to be the villain of a narrative that he did not create. Basically, because he went out here and took Bill de Blasio's stance, this white man, he is now being set up to become the fall guy. And this is all done because your Eric Adams was an emotional guy who wanted to gain favor with the whites. And now that he's gained favor with the whites, they are setting him up to be the fall guy as related to this situation. And sadly, your Eric Adams doesn't really see how the white media is allowing him to represent himself and become his own enemy. And he's sitting there saying, oh, they're misrepresenting you. No, you played right into their hands because you didn't understand that the game is chess, not checkers. And you went out here playing Candyland with white supremacy, hoping that you would gain some favor, not understanding, like Professor Black Truth always says, white supremacy always breaks its toys, and it looks like they're tired of playing with Eric Adams only 6 weeks into his term as mayor. And basically, they are setting up your Eric Adams to take the big fall because they really don't want him in the position of the mayor. So basically, they are setting him up to be booted out of this office the same way they set up Eliot Spitzer back in 2008. Now, your Eliot Spitzer was a white man back in 2008 who, like Eric Adams, came on real strong talking about how he was going to reform New York. But because your Eliot Spitzer did not understand the subtleties of the politics transpiring around him, like Eric Adams, he alienated a lot of New York power players. And as he alienated those New York power players, they set him up to wind up falling really hard as he got caught up in a prostitution scandal. And your Eliot Spitzer was gone in a year after taking office, all because he was running his mouth, talking a good game, like your Eric Adams, coming from his emotions, and they used the same emotions to destroy him. Now, I really saw where your Eric Adams was coming weak from day one when he started talking about fighting COVID with swagger, and that to me came across as an extremely beta male statement. And another statement he made talking about how these were his schools and his facilities. That's something a female would say. And these journalists just let him keep on talking. And again, they're not misrepresenting him. They allowed him to represent himself. And then they took his representations of himself and then used them against him. Again, white media working like it always does, taking both sides of the argument. And this time, they always use the arguments of black people against themselves. But sadly, your Eric Adams, like many boot-licking, butter biscuit eating, cream of wheat men, really did not understand what was going on, and he doesn't really understand how he's the patsy in this situation. And as the patsy in this situation, they are basically setting him up to fail. So he doesn't really see what's going on with white supremacy. He's just caught up in his emotions about, oh, the journalists misrepresenting him. No, they're not misrepresenting you. No, this is the white media being the white media, and the white media was never designed to go out here and represent a black person in any sort of positive fashion, especially as related to any sort of politics. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box, because this video won't be monetized. And if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.